In a time of rising unrest, when borders dominate headlines and immigration policy shapes the future of our nation, the truth matters. From the front lines of law enforcement, national security, and public policy, this is Frontline Facts, where rhetoric is stripped away, where politics takes a back seat, and where facts, hard, documented facts, lead the conversation. As instability grows beyond our southern border, as communities feel the impact at home, we bring you informed voices. Attorneys, senior law enforcement leaders, policy experts, and professionals who understand the law, the protocols, and the consequences. This isn't opinion. This isn't spin. This is clarity in a time of confusion. This is Frontline Facts, and the conversation starts now.
Welcome to Frontline Facts with Louisa Deason, where we correct the rhetoric on immigration issues and, of course, public policy. Today, we are here to figure out who is brave enough to make significant changes to the problems that are riddling Harris County today. This candidate is not just a conservative. He's a Republican, a man of faith, and a pastor with an intense plan starting on day one. Pastor Richard Vega, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Listen, you are running for the Harris County Commissioner. Let's talk a little bit about what was it that made you interested in running for the position of commissioner?
Well, there's a lot of those topics, and I'll just tell you one of the main ones is the Harris County Commissioners adopted a thing called the O'Donnell Decree to Send, right? So that allowed misdemeanor felons to be able to get out on our streets with $0 to $100 bond, which also fled into the felony courts as well. And I actually sat down with a few families and that got hit with this. So the people that got arrested for to say third-degree felony got dropped down to a Class A misdemeanor, got out for $0 to $100 bond, turned around, got on the streets and committed murder. Right. During that time that I started kind of paying attention to, it was about 150 families that have been affected by murder for allowing these individuals to get out on $0 to $100 bond. That number is now up to over 400 people, families that have been affected by these courts. And so just looking into all of that, I discovered that, the only change that can happen, it has to come from the top. And where's that at? That's at Commissioner's Court. And then there's a whole slew of other issues as well. But that was one of the main ones that really fired me up to get involved into the county commissioners.
Well, and I've done quite a bit of research on that O'Donnell decree, and that is really, truly a mess. My understanding now is that there are illegal aliens that are falling through the cracks and taking advantage of that. And the numbers that I was able to come up with based on several interviews with Mario Garza and others were that there's probably about 1,200 murders and capital murder suspects walking the streets in Harris County and zero accountability. So, we all know that the crime has to come down. But what is your stance on the big debacle down at City Council? And of course, you see things that come across your desk and you go, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. It's not going to keep communities safe if we don't continue to cooperate with some degree of cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement. Although there aren't memorandums of understanding agreed to and signed off on, there is an understanding of working collectively. I think any law enforcement who doesn't collectively work with others is just kind of playing Russian roulette.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So there's been a lot of issues with that particular, topic that you're talking about. Let's just talk about the fund that was created to allow taxpayer dollars, almost $10 million, $1.3 million that has been put aside each year to give attorneys for illegals, which is a major issue, right? That's our taxpayer dollars that is funding illegal services, attorney services for their defense. And then obviously in Harris County, not turning over illegal aliens over to ICE is another whole entire separate issue. And then the fact that we're now part of the legal defense fund, anywhere from $160 million to $191 million dollars that have been set aside to send 1,000 inmates over to Louisiana. I mean, it just continues to become bigger and bigger issues. We saw recently in Houston, like you said, the city council members tried to adopt a policy that would stop local law enforcement from cooperating with ICE or, calling out ICE on particular stop, which was crazy. And we knew this was coming because actually my opponent suggested this on open court during commissioner's court. He requested that he get put on the item, the same thing, that local law enforcement not work with ICE. I immediately did a video because I actually helped and kind of navigated through the SB4 with Senate Bill 4 here in Texas that actually is a law that requires local law enforcement to work with federal agents. I did a video immediately, and I couldn't believe that the county commissioner was trying to circumvent the law. And it's just crazy that city council members here in the city of Houston wanted to do the exact same thing. We knew it was coming. We saw how that ended up, going against law enforcement. And again, in the city of Houston, there was over, I think, 5,000 arrests of illegal aliens that were attached to over 40 different gangs. And out of those 5,000 individuals, they were all tied to either homicide, gang-related, child predators, and violent crimes. We're not talking about people that they say, oh, well, it's just a civil war, and I sat down with many city council members and I said, you realize what you're about to open up, right? Because if I get a speeding ticket, and I don't go to court and I have a warrant out for my arrest, are you going to make a policy that favors all of us that are actually citizens here in the United States? What are you trying to do here? What's the accomplishment? And they were trying to cater to 74 illegals they had over 2 million encounters. HPD had over 2 million encounters with civilians, and just think they only had 74 individuals that they ended up actually calling ICE out on, and they were literally trying to make a policy to where local law enforcement wouldn't work with ICE agents, which is just crazy to me.
And just that whole concept is crazy. I used to work for ICE. I remember years and years ago that there was an understanding with both HPD and Harris County Sheriff's Department. And it's just a common courtesy, it's no different than having a homicide suspect in a different state, and somebody in a different state who arrests that individual gets a bolo or intel on that individual and then contacts the agency that is looking for him as a courtesy. It's what you have to do in law enforcement, basically, at all levels, not just local and state, but at federal, because it saves lives. The 287G program saves lives. It's so much easier to go into the confinement of the entry program when people are being arrested, that you have ICE agents or at least 2 deputized officers from that particular enforcement agency to just ask the right questions. And then you have them in the security and safety of a confined area where you can place an ICE detainer on them, instead of having them bond out and released back into the community where they go back out to their compadres, where all the bad people are, where there are guns and drugs, and they're just, it's just wreaking havoc. But I'm so grateful that you're running for county commissioner. Now, what we have today is a county commissioner that's kind of been a real mess all the way around with this sanctuary city and so on and so forth. But, let's talk about a little bit about the flooding and the problems that are riddled with road construction and the potholes and all that. People are concerned about having another 500-year flood. What are some of the things that you foresee becoming a commissioner and working on?
Yeah, so one of them is big, right? So it's 9 years after Harvey. We had a 1.1, I think it was $1.1 billion between state and federal funding that came down through the mitigation projects. And out of those, there were 17 projects that were picked, right, by everyone, including the voters who actually voted in a bond, which was a $2.5 billion bond. So there are 17 projects. Only 3, as of today, have been awarded any type of movement. So at least 14 projects that are at risk for Harris County voters, or Harris County residents, not even voters, Harris County residents at risk of losing protection, because now we're at risk of losing $660 million of our money that should have went into ditches, roads, to make sure that we're protected from these floods. And it's just sad that our county commissioners, now they want to hold the flood district control director accountable. And it's crazy. They want to develop a plan now. what are we, 6 months from 2027 when the money is going to be owed back because we had these grants? And now you want to hold people accountable? Now you want to put the
Well,
blame
and
on
what does that
somebody?
do to the morale in the communities? I mean, we all drive around going, okay, if it rains 24 to 48 hours, we know certain pockets of the city are going to be underwater in no time at all.
Absolutely. So, at one point years ago, we could all, if it rained real bad, you knew what streets flooded. You knew where you could drive around, kind of, just kind of go around the different streets. Now, it doesn't matter where you go because the traffic is so high. They decided to do all the projects now. In the last probably 2 3 months, it seems like all of a sudden they got all this project money to get all these construction projects going, trying to beautify the city for FIFA is what it is in political season. However, our infrastructure is so weak right now. One of the things that I would love to do is be able to bring in manufacturing companies. I'd love to bring in new technology companies. There's no one wanting to come to Houston or within Harris County with a infrastructure problem. If we can't manage the billions of dollars that we have been awarded to be able to improve our infrastructure for the rapid growth that we're receiving for people moving here and all this wonderful things that is going on in our community, these companies are not going to want to come here and invest, right? So if we want new people to come here and invest in our beloved community, we got to make sure that they come and they're protected. We want to show strong infrastructure. We want to show that we can do it and we want their business, right? They don't want to come here thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to flood, or the insurance is also through the roof. I'm going to flood anyways, right? So we want to make sure that they're protected as well.
Well, and you bring up a valid point, the critical infrastructure. What measures are being taken to protect critical infrastructure, such as the water plants, the federal buildings, the electricity grids, all of those things that are major, considering the fact of the situation going on in Iran? And of course, the other is, we, under the previous administration, saw precedent numbers of crossings along the southern border, and many were from terrorist countries or terrorist supported countries. So, what is your view on that?
Yeah, so I sat down in a briefing last year. I've gone to Washington plenty of times, but sat down with, I think, former now Chief Banks just resigned, but sat down with him and had a wonderful briefing on what was going on with the border issues. During that time, we had 46 individuals that were on the national terrorist list that was arrested here. And so, that back then it was only 5 months into President Trump's second term. There's already been 46 individuals that were arrested on a national terrorist list. So that's kind of crazy to me because that imagine how many other individuals that are out there, right? And so when you say national terrorists, you got to understand this isn't just your somebody in the backyard making something. These are people that are educated and well funded. These are individuals that come here with one purpose, and that's to destroy Americans. They don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. All they care about is taking down Americans, or America. We here in the Houston Harris County area have to be very much on alert. We have to have every single agency working together, and just not with the border issue. I mean, we have the number one port in the United States, right? And logistically, from I-10 and all the other major corridors that wrap around that area, it's honestly, it's a failing infrastructure through that. If we're going to keep up with the demand of the population of the United States and continue to be the number one port, we want to make sure that our logistics are handled at the rate of growth, right? And so we got to look down to the future. But what does that mean, right? It's great that we're able to, offload, all of these wonderful big trucks and doing all this wonderful logistics throughout the United States. But what about the security measures that is taken when these things come into our community, right? Because when they get on our roads, they're driving through our community. What is in them? What's on them, right? So we have to make sure that we are doing our due diligence as a county and as all the surrounding cities, and making sure that our residents are protected. We got to make sure that we're working with the federal agencies. We got to make sure we're working with state agencies, and we want to make sure that all law enforcement are able to work with each other, making sure the communication line remains and stays open to ensure safety for all of our residents. I think the port is one of those major issues right now for the Port of Houston is public safety. And that's at the top of my list.
There was a point where we were the second largest port. I think Virginia was the first port, but we were the first in tonnage And I know that we get a lot of cargo, especially with the world, with the trades that we do between Texas and Mexico, Texas being the largest state that does most of the trade between Mexico and the US. And so the opportunity for growth and the opportunity for business to come here is really critical if we want to continue to grow and benefit. Making a little bit of a shift, let's talk a little bit about fiscal responsibility. Taxpayers are tired of footing the bill for things that they don't really think they should be footing the bill for. And you said a figure earlier that just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. 600 billion for grants that are owed, or was it million or billion that you
$660 million.
Yeah. $1 million on grants that we will have to now pay back, and they're wanting the taxpayer to foot the bill? I mean, that's insanity. That right there is the reason why we can't seem to get ahead. Where's the budgeting? Where's the fiscal responsibility? What are some of the ideas that you have to turn this ship around?
Absolutely. Great question. And I 100% agree with you. So right now we have the Toll Road Authority, right? So the Toll Road Authority generates about $1 billion a year with $400 million coming back in surplus to the county commissioners. It goes into the general fund. Now so think about that. In the last 2 years, the commissioners received almost $1 billion. Why are they raising our taxes if we have a surplus of almost $1 billion in the last 2 years? Now, what are we doing with that money? That money is critical to going back to the taxpayers, right? So are we putting that back in infrastructure? Are we putting that back in public safety? Because we're saying we don't have the money, but if we look at the book and we say, okay, what can we trim, right? Anything that we do when we get into office, we're going to have to be able to trim some fat. Where do we trim that fat? We're going to have to do away with the senseless spending, and we can use this Toll Road Authority money not just for any general fund. We need to allocate it towards whether it's to not raising taxes, which I will never vote to raise taxes, or maybe we drop the toll road, instead of $2 a toll. What if we go back down to $1.50? Let's give back to the people that pay into it, right? I know it sounds crazy, and people are like, "Oh my God, we'll lose some surplus money." Well, you shouldn't have it anyways. But we can put better services.
Valid point.
One of the other main issues with the city of Houston is that they're responding to emergency calls on the Beltway 8. They're having to do all these emergency expenditures and not being reimbursed by the county. Well, what if the county decided to place, hubs along the Beltway where we have our own county emergency response, like with the constables, and our own county services of ambulances that can respond to these calls, and it now relieves the Houston Police Department to be able to go back into the city and respond to those calls, right? Where we can handle the toll road. If we have $400 million in surplus a year, why aren't we using these funds?
It's a year. I mean, that is a lot of money. My concern is, we do need to learn how to allocate money differently. And, the morale across the board with law enforcement, and everybody's hating on law enforcement, and that's kind of a bad morale. But one of the things that I hear is, and I have 99 living right here in the back, it's in the back of my backyard, and they race every single night. There's racing. I don't know if they closed a track or what's going on, but there's racing, and people are dying every other night on 99.
Yeah, so the Hot Rod Association got moved out of right here in my area, and I know the Hot Rod Association would love to come back to Harris County. This was a track that was designed for people like that's racing out there by you, to go and get go get their steam out, right? To go out there and test out their vehicles or whatever it is that their heart so desires. I'm also in conversations with them, and I hope to be able to bring the Hot Rod Association back to Harris County. That's one of the things that I would like to do. And another thing is, when we talked about it, about the legal defense fund, I would love to cut the legal defense fund. That's $160 million to $190 million out. And so let me just explain that.
Yeah,
so
please do. That is that number, and I just go, wait a minute, that's going towards what? Criminal illegal aliens?
Yeah, absolutely. So 100, and let's just make it small, 150 million. It started off at 150, now we're up to about 190, depending on the year. So if you get arrested for assault, you get arrested for a DWI, you have to either have an ankle monitor or a blower in your vehicle. Previously, the person charged had to pay for that. Right now, we're paying for it. The taxpayers are paying for it.
That's crazy.
All that $0 to $100 bill We're paying for it. They're not paying for it. All they have to do is say, I'm poor and I don't work and I don't have the money. Don't worry, sign here and you're bailed out. Well, why?
Is that falling
Where's
under the O'Donnell decree as well?
It's falling all under the O'Donnell.
That whole thing skipped several courts. It went straight to the Southern District at a federal level instead of going local and then state. That's absurd.
That's it. And so they created that it's 160 to 190 million dollars every year for this. And it fell under that. Exactly. So when it falls under that, now we, the taxpayers, are forking the bill. I want to do away with that. I want to do away with the illegal fund for the defense for the illegals. I want to bring that money back. And then when I say trim the fat, that's the fat that I'm talking about trimming, right? And putting all that back into the kitty so we can pass it back down to the taxpayers.
Well, and I'm sure that jails and things of that nature need upgrading and all kinds of stuff, you know?
Absolutely. But look, the jails. So look, we just signed a contract. I say we the taxpayers, that our county commissioners just signed a contract in March. $38 million to send 1,000 inmates to Louisiana, right? That's $76 million in a 2-year contract to send inmate 1,000, by the way, to Louisiana. You're telling me with $76 million, because it was a 2-year contract, that you can't build on to the jails? Yeah. You're telling me that $76 million isn't enough money, not only to build onto, but to turn around and hire new staffing? I mean, what are we doing? Who got the contract on that?
And if they're releasing everybody, Pastor Vega, what's happening is that there's enough bed space to go around.
Exactly.
I want to know what the per diem is at Harris County and HPD to house. I know what the per diem is at the federal level, but this is crazy. No wonder I get calls and people being transferred to Louisiana. I'm like, wait a minute, we don't, I mean, at the federal, they transfer bodies, or we call them, bodies, but we transfer individuals that are in custody all the time to different states based on bed space. I don't think any law enforcement will ever have enough bed space when you have a crisis. But we had a crisis under the Biden administration, and all of those people were catch and release. So what does that do for the safety of, you're bringing in mixes of people that don't want to assimilate. So let's go into some of the things that you as a pastor have done. What's the most important thing people need to get back to? And the basics is obviously back to God. 100%. We need to instill family values, conservative values, good values in our children's lives, in our communities for them to thrive.
Absolutely. I agree 100 million%. We need faith back in everything.
I would agree with that. Okay, let's make a little transition and see what else. What are we going to be doing for things like seniors? What do you have any plans for what can help senior citizens? I know property taxes are a huge concern for them. So what are some of the other agenda items that you have on your campaign that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely property taxes, lowering property taxes is at the top of my list, right? I never want to vote for higher property taxes, and I want to figure out ways. I would love to even reduce property taxes. I know that's a bad thing in government. However, if we have a surplus, I don't know those numbers, right? But I'm willing to look at those numbers. Why can't we, right? We got to ask these questions. Why can't we do a reduction in taxes? Wow. But also, I want to be able to make sure that the senior residents understand all of their benefits, right? So doing educational seminars, not ones where they got to come to me, where we go to them, right? We can send out teams to areas and go to these senior livings or even our community centers, HOA centers, and do educational seminars on specifically for those that are seniors to make sure they understand all of their benefits, not some of their benefits, and using our partners, right? So making sure that, Medicaid, Medicare, that's a big thing with seniors because they don't understand that they have to be enrolled by a certain age. They don't understand how they worked so long, they retired, they have this insurance. Why do they have to get Medicaid? Understand, even though that's more on a federal aspect of it, but making sure they understand all benefits going forward, right? Maybe they didn't fill out their homestead exemption properly. So making sure that they can get those, all the resources to them. And another thing I like to do is beef up our bus system here in Harris County Precinct 2. I'd like to offer more trips for not just for seniors, but for the community in general. But I mean, seniors would probably take most advantage of it because they're retired, right? But
A lot of
offer
them won't be
more
able to
of a
drive.
correct, right? And so, gas prices are up and high, but I'd like to see a lot more trips for our community. Maybe going to Galveston, Kima, wherever it is, bowling alleys, things that they can get out and go enjoy themselves. I'd like to see those type of things pick up as well. A lot more community engagement between us and the community.
Let me ask you one final thought.
Mhm.
So, to the person who is usually sitting at home, which makes up to about 40% of the vote, many are second, third, fourth, maybe sometimes fifth generation Mexican Americans. How do you get out the message to that group that says, I'm so tired of the negativity, I just don't want to get out and vote? It is critical in this state and in this city that we get that group out to vote. They're conservatives, they believe in the system. What is your message to them, and how can you get out to the communities to help them understand how important this cycle of voting really is?
Yeah, so Latinos, we are conservative. I literally had a meeting this morning with four business owners, young Latino business owners here in the precinct, and we're conservative. We're raised conservative. It's who we are. It's getting back to the basics, but we have to use all the tools that are given to us individually. So you have to spread the word, right? Share with your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your friends. Have that political conversation. Look, you don't have to be Republican or Democrat. Just get the conversation going. You can't be for higher taxes and be for the community. I'm sorry. You can't be for high crime or letting criminals out and then see what's going on in our community. We have to take a stance and defend our community. This is our home. So have those conversations. Some of them might be tough conversations, but we have to educate our people. And the only way we do that is by starting the conversation. A good friend of mine, Charlie Kirk, he was really good at starting a conversation. And it didn't matter if you disagreed with him, he wanted to talk to you more. He didn't want to talk with the people that agree with him. He wanted to get in front of or have the people that disagree with him always to the front of the line. Always. I've been to so many different of his events. I've been there with him, and there would be a line of a ton of people that agreed with him. And he would say, who disagrees with me? Come to the front of the line. And
It's like,
that's how
put
you
yourself
get it
out
done.
there. Okay, throw rocks
You
at
know,
me.
yeah, exactly. And get that conversation started. So Latinos out there, we have to make sure that we get the education out there and start the conversation.
If people want to donate to your campaign, where can they find the information? Where can they donate to your campaign?
Yeah, at www.richardvega.us, and there's a donation link on there. That's richardvega.us.
Now, we all know that all the media is not actually very truthful with their portrayal of their version of what's really happening. So people get confused on the news. I guess it depends on what channel you view. I get that contradiction all the time when people say, "You're lying. You don't know what you're talking about." Well, I'm the former spokesperson for for DHS and for ICE. I think I do know the statutes. I learned them over the years, and I have a great knowledge of them. But I always say to the person who says, you're not being fair. Well, fair is what is on the books. What are the laws that are on the books? And then, of course, it's a matter of interpretation. But people need to find other sources to go to for credibility, for the truth, for the facts, maybe do their own research. I talk to people. I know you're running for county commissioner, but I mean, I've helped a lot of candidates in the last 15 years, and it's always the same thing. They stick to one source and they don't want to investigate anything else outside of their little comfort box. And it's like, get out and do your own investigation. Learn about the candidates, learn what their issues are and what they are really fighting for. If you want, cheaper taxes and you want properties to thrive and communities to grow and for schools to thrive and your children to have a much better future, these are the things that you need to make sure you're getting the information on.
Absolutely.
It's just a basic fact of life.
Absolutely. And you know what? My race is very much come straight to your front door. And it is, it's not, it deals with so much with taxes in your everyday life. And it's so important that everyone researches their candidate and understands where they're at. If you're looking for a candidate on a national level and understanding, those particular politics, research them. And if you're on, if your mindset is solely on a national level, then, do what you do. But you better be involved locally and you better understand what goes on, because the local politics is what ends up at your front door.
Now, what is the first thing you'll do? Give me the first and second thing you'll do on day one.
on day
I
day
didn't mean to
one,
put you on the spot, but give me the first two things you would do changes immediately in day one.
yeah. So day one, start trimming the fat. We got to trim the fat. Let's figure out where all the dollars are at. But while we're auditing and figuring out exactly where everything is at, we can start putting on the agenda day one. Let's trim the fat. Let's cut the funds at the Criminal Defense Fund with the O'Donnell Decree. Let's stop the funds for the legal services for illegals. Right? Those are monies that we know we can stop those policies, bring that funding right back into us, and then start looking where else we can start trimming the fat. I know. That those are big deals to me. And here's the thing. I want to be able to beef up our law enforcement. I would love to be able to add more sheriffs and constables. I would love to make sure that our communities are safe. Houston needs to hire about 5,000 more officers. Let's be an arm to them. How can we be an arm to them? By beefing up our constables and our sheriff.
Amen. Well, Pastor Vega, I want to wish you luck. And it's been a pleasure interviewing you this afternoon. We've come to the end of our show, so I want to let everybody know that we will be back on our podcast on Friday. And I want to thank you for the interview, and thank you again. This is Frontline Facts with Luisa Deason. I am your host, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. Bless you.